Look at that. This NVIDIA GPU is over $100 off, and this AMD GPU, $500 off. Even the new generation we are finding good discounts on. But how am I finding these prices and you can't? Well, quite easily. Let me explain. One of the things that gets commonly misunderstood about the data in our best value GPU series is that the prices we are talking about here, any consumer can get at any time. But unfortunately, that's an unrealistic expectation, whether you're talking about my videos or another comparison video. But to fully understand why that's the case and how I find some of the best deals, we need to understand three things. Number one, the stupidity of MSRP, also being the answer to why these videos exist, the data collection process we use here, and finally, how we organize the pricing data for you in a way that's a fair representation of real market prices. And at the end of this video, it'll probably become pretty obvious that some things need to change. Let me explain. So I have a question. Are you an avid PC enthusiast stuck with that ugly ass Windows watermark ruining your gaming and streaming experience? Well, I have great news for you. WhoKeys is a software licensing website dedicated to getting you affordable keys. And the best part is you can get rid of that watermark in a matter of minutes. All you need to do is head down to the video description, click the sponsor link and enjoy an additional 25% off using my coupon code TL20. With PayPal checkout and quick key delivery, all you need to do is hit the Windows key, type activate and paste your key right here to become fully activated. It really is that simple and that cheap. So head down to the video description if that sounds right for you. And thank you WhoKeys for sponsoring this video. So before we actually go through my process of gathering real-world GPU prices together, I called MSRP stupid and said it's the exact reason these videos exist and are so important. But why is that? Well, MSRP is an acronym for Manufacturer's Suggested Retail Price here in the US, and there will be an equivalent term for you in your region, but I do mean here in the US. I understand that my very British accent will always throw people off, but I am a proud immigrant, which is why my data tends to be US focused, although we do have a rather heartbreaking regional comparison coming soon. But MSRP is the recommended price the product should be sold at, set by the manufacturer of the product, and typically does translate to the cost that you would expect to pay. If a product has an MSRP of $500, it is typical that you will pay $500 for the item. But nowhere is this less true than when it comes to graphics cards. And I'm not even sure of any other market segment where MSRP is just so far removed from reality. Let me show you and explain why. Here we have the MSRP of most current and previous generation GPUs. This is the price the manufacturer suggests the product should be sold at, and the price most reviewers will quote for their pre-release review videos, as there is no real-world pricing data for them to use. And if we analyze the value of each GPU by simply dividing the cost by the performance, which in this case, cost being MSRP, we can see that something like the RTX 3050 is a rather compelling NVIDIA card when it comes to the low end, even better value than the RX 6600, for example. But then this happens. You actually go to buy it based on this recommendation and realize that the RTX 3050 is slightly over MSRP, while the RX 6600 has dropped by a significant amount. And because of this dramatic difference, it changes the result of the value calculation completely, making the 6600 about 30% better value when you go to purchase it. And that's the thing that really matters, isn't it? It's not the price that is being quoted by the manufacturer, but the price that is being asked of you when you part with your money, the difference between the theoretical cost and the amount that is actually leaving your bank account. And as my entire reason for doing these videos is so that you can find the best value GPU for your needs. MSRP cannot be the metric that we use for cost, as most models are either way over or way under what the manufacturer suggests. Explaining why a model is higher or lower than MSRP is probably a separate video. In fact, we kind of covered it a lot in these two videos during the GPU crisis, but most often it comes down to supply and demand. So, makes sense. We can't extract value using MSRP, as that is not representative of the real price that you will pay, so we need to figure out a different solution that is more accurate, which brings me onto this guy, and why you should probably thank him more than you thank me. So now that we know MSRP is the worst way to evaluate the value of a graphics card, We needed to come up with a new solution that better represents the real-world cost of each GPU. So what better way to show you than gathering today's lowest prices together, and I'll explain how this is done. So I'm going to meet you over there at the gaming system. Let's go. First and foremost, before we start with looking at GPU prices together and hunting down the best value deals for today, I want to start with a thank you to my editor, as he has been the primary one that's been going through this process basically every single day. And you'll come to see how that's pretty laborious, but we'll talk about how that's going to change in the future, definitely for the better. But today's the 25th of June, and what we're going to do is start by copying across yesterday's best value prices into a new sheet and opening up all of these links to check how prices have changed. So let's do that now. Okay, that's gone down a little bit. $6,800, $470. That's not bad for Sapphire Pulse, which gives us this. And what I'll do is explain a couple of the things that we've done so far, because we've removed some records here, which is the reason for that is because these models are out of stock. So we need to go find a new cheapest option. And then the ones that we've turned gray, we do as sort of a reference point. This is to indicate that a price has changed for these links. I think today was mostly for the worst. Apart from the 6,800, I think that came down a little bit, but we'll have to see in a sec. But the next thing that we do from here is go off to Amazon, Newegg, and PC Part Picker, which includes B&H Photo, Best Buy, the manufacturer's retailer sites. And what we're going to do is find the cheapest GPUs for today. So let's do that now. And that's that pass done. So we've gone through Newegg and we've also highlighted any links that have changed if we found better prices. We did on a couple of them, the 6600 we did find at $180 again, which is a really good price for that card. So what we're going to do now is the same thing but with Amazon. See if we can find anything even cheaper. That's a 7900 XTX shipped and sold by Amazon for $830. That's pretty insane. Okay, so that brings us onto this list. We have a couple updates from Amazon, most notably the 7900 XTX, $100 less. That's actually insane, which comes to $830, about 20% off its MSRP. So what we're going to do to follow this up is have a look at PC Part Picker, see if we can find anything even better priced. So I'll run through those now. So here's an example of how we can get better prices than PC Part Picker. So we are lowest to highest on RTX 3070. It's pulling this AMP Holo on Newegg sellers as the cheapest option, actually. But for us, we found a 3070 on Newegg again for cheaper than that. And probably the reason for that is PC Part Picker hasn't refreshed its prices in a while, which means that the prices that we're getting at the time that we record them are always going to be better than PC Part Pickers, because we have several instances of GPUs like this, where PC Part Picker results are more expensive than what we have found. $275 for a 3060 Ti. That's actually a very good price. Which brings us to our final list, which we then organize and put into the comment section of the last best value GPUs video. But there's a couple things suboptimal with this. Many of the developers out there are probably shouting down the screen at this pretty large time investment, and I would be too, because there is definitely a better way. How I'd like to improve this process in the future is to write a web scraper. And what a web scraper would do in this context is to go to all of the GPU web pages and extract the price from them, as long as it is in stock. Then what it could do is dump that to a database, and it could run it continuously or at a given time, however we specify it. It's a software solution. It works how you code it to work. And following on from that, it could automate the process of updating the comment section via the YouTube API, and is absolutely the way that I intend to do it. And that's 100% my bad. I just haven't had the time investment to do that, but we'll need to do it soon because of a new software project that I've been working on specifically for you guys. And I've pretty much made myself obsolete by doing it. So now that we have all of the best prices for today, that's only really one part of the best value GPUs video. The majority of it is talking about historical averages and talking about our real world prices. But what do we mean by real world prices? It's not just the lowest that we've gotten today, but it takes a little bit more of a calculation to be fair and to be representative of real market prices. So let me show you how we do that. So now we have covered why MSRP cannot be a metric that we use for quantifying a GPU's value, and we've also gone through how we combat that by collecting our own real-world prices. We now need to find a method to appropriately represent this data to you, in a way that's both a fair representation of the market and also a realistic price that you could find. So let me show you what we came up with, because my first thought was we have all of these historical prices. So let's just grab the lowest price for the time period that we're talking about and just call it a day. But there's a potentially major problem with that. Let me explain. It seems very realistic, especially as we're gathering prices most days, that we could come into a situation where we have recorded a price anomaly, something that was incorrectly listed and priced too low. It does happen. And because in this example, we are using the absolute lowest price in our data, that incorrect price has now made its way into the graphs, which is now not only just teasing an unrealistic price, but also means that our value calculation is not accurate and could have me recommending a product at a price and value that is fundamentally just not realistic. So okay then, the absolute lowest price doesn't make sense, but what about average? Let's add them all together and divide by the count to give us these results. But I also found that this produces numbers that are not particularly valuable, but for another reason. Because prices are so volatile, there can be such a big difference between what's consistently cheapest and the average. A difference of hundreds of dollars, just because a few higher price listings that shouldn't be considered to be purchased anyway, overwhelmed what's a more typical price for that model. So I think we're getting closer, but we still run into the same issue of building graphs based on prices that are not a fair representation of the market. Which brings us onto the final column, and the one that we have been using for quite some time now, the cheapest 10%. And as the name suggests, it is not the absolute cheapest and nor the average either, but ranks all of the prices from low to high and takes a number at the 10% mark. It mitigates the issue of falling victim to a random pricing anomaly, providing that we have enough data to compensate, which we do, while also conveying a number that's a relative good price for that card. Meaning if you watch my videos and find one of the cards at the same price as I have shown, you have found a relative good price for that card over the time period we are looking at, and a good target price to work towards if you are still on the hunt. But to find out what are good prices for each model and which models offer the best value, check out the latest best value GPUs to buy right now, where we critically analyze the value of each current and previous generation graphics card based on what we have covered today, and highlight which cards you should focus on for each manufacturer and budget. And you can check that out by clicking here. Otherwise guys, share, like, subscribe, they are always appreciated, and I hope you have an amazing day.